Hey guys, we're so glad you're back with us here at Two Minds, One Purpose. Let's settle in and dive into something real today.
We're your hosts, Ashley and Amy, sisters, mental health professionals, and just two humans figuring life out right alongside you.
This is a space for honest, heartfelt conversations about mental health and everyday life, the kind we all need more of. And while we're social workers, this podcast isn't about treatment plans or clinical talk.
It's about the messy, beautiful, funny, and sometimes hard moments that shape our mental wellness. So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's talk about it.
If you're new to the show, make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Spotify at Two Minds, One Purpose. We always share the resources mentioned by our guest speakers in our show notes and on our podcast page. So be sure to check those out after the episode.
This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, and it is not a substitute for professional medical advice or mental health advice. Please consult a qualified healthcare provider before making any changes to your health or wellness routine.
Today's episode is a big one. We're talking about PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, a hormonal condition that affects millions of women and can show up as irregular cycles, stubborn weight gain, acne, fatigue, mood swings, and hormone chaos that often goes misunderstood or ignored.
PCOS isn't just a reproductive issue. It impacts metabolism, insulin, inflammation, and overall health. And way too many women are left trying to figure it out on their own.
Which is exactly why we had to bring her back. A returning guest and someone who always breaks complex hormone topics down in a way that actually makes sense. Sam Ferguson.
Sam is a registered holistic nutritionist and certified personal trainer who specializes in helping women work with their bodies and not against them, especially when it comes to PCOS, energy, and hormone balance.
We're so excited for this conversation, so let's jump in and welcome back Sam Ferguson. All right. Hey, Sam, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you girls doing?
We're doing good, besides the big snow that we're getting.
Yeah, ready for Christmas. Another Christmas. Are you ready for Christmas?
Yeah, I think so. I think I finished up my shopping yesterday. It's not going to be a very white Christmas where I am. It rained yesterday and it's raining tomorrow, so it'll probably be a sloppy one, but...
Where are you from again?
I'm in Carleton Place.
Yeah.
So Ottawa.
Near Ottawa.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's a white Christmas here anyways.
Yeah, they're calling for 75 centimeters of snow, I believe.
75?
Oh my gosh.
Well, I thought it was 40 or something.
I don't know, it changes every day.
Either way, you've got enough for all of us.
Yeah. Anyways, podcast number 3. Thank you for being here again.
My pleasure.
Today we have an important subject, which is PCOS. So just to begin, Sam, can you just tell us what is PCOS? Because we hear the word, but we don't really know what it means or what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's becoming more and more common. A lot more women are being diagnosed with PCOS or maybe have an inkling that they might be dealing with it. So I'm glad that we're talking about it. So PCOS stands for polycystic ovary syndrome. But honestly, the name can be a little bit misleading because there aren't always cysts, and it actually isn't cysts that are in the ovaries. It's actually an overgrowth of follicles. So follicles that haven't matured and released an egg can kind of become a little bit overgrown in the ovaries, and that can show up in a scan. But not every woman who has PCOS has those follicles that are growing. So it's kind of it's an interesting one, and it really is at the base of it. It's a hormonal and metabolic condition. So not necessarily just related to reproduction. It really does come back to how the body handles insulin, how the ovaries communicate with the brain, and how our various hormones are balanced. And one of the big hormones that's at play is testosterone. And what I really want to kind of make clear for the listeners is that, you know, it's not like a character flaw, and it's not like a sign of a lack of discipline or failure if you have PCOS. It really just means that there is, you know, some kind of downstream effect that's happening on insulin resistance, inflammation, stress. And the good news is that PCOS is a very manageable condition. And I think what might be helpful is to chat a little bit about what women with PCOS might experience. Because, like Amy was just saying before we started, your experience might be very different from another woman who's dealing with PCOS, right? Mm-hmm. So a few of the common signs or symptoms would be irregular or missing periods, trouble ovulating or getting pregnant. Acne is a big one, especially when it's kind of popping up around your jawline. Hair thinning on your scalp, but then having hair growth in other areas that women don't typically have hair growth. So, like on our face and things like that. Weight gain can be another one, particularly around the midsection area. Fatigue, food cravings, blood sugar swings. It can also impact our mood, which we're going to talk about. So, signs of anxiety, low mood, and just like not really feeling like yourself. But yeah, that variability in the symptoms can be really frustrating because it's like, why does my PCOS not look like other women's PCOS?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. When I was first diagnosed, I was actually 21, I believe. So I always knew I had something, but I didn't know what it was. So when I was a teenager, I struggled a lot more because I didn't know what I didn't know what I had, and I knew my body was different. And when you're a teenager, like life is, everything is so stressful, and that was a big stress for me. But I got diagnosed as a young adult, and now that I've accepted it, it's better, but I still struggle with a lot of the symptoms that you just mentioned. So like my first symptom or the first sign was a testosterone. So I always had like more hair like on my arms or like on my legs. What else did my periods extreme fatigue. Like I would eat, Sam, literally when I was in high school, and my my eating habits weren't really healthy back then. So let's say I would eat pasta. I would like instantly be tired, like extremely tired. And after supper, I would want to go to bed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was another sign. And then, I'm trying to think back like 10 years ago, but anyways, I guess you could say mood swings. I was a lot like triggered, I guess. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. My periods were always regular, so that wasn't.
Yeah. I think you just need to have a few symptoms, right?
I was told 3 out of the 6 to be diagnosed with PCOS.
Okay, so I was going to ask what the main kind of symptoms were that they.
Oh, actually, another one was super painful periods. That was actually the big one, and that's where I was like, okay, this is enough. I have to go see a doctor, and then they did an internal ultrasound, blood work. I was transferred to a OB in Sudbury because I was in university back then. And that's what she told me. You need 3 symptoms out of 6 to be diagnosed with PCOS.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you did receive a diagnosis, because for a lot of women it can go undiagnosed or it's missed because of hormonal birth control use that can kind of like suppress certain symptoms. Sometimes women don't find out until they're trying to conceive and they're having a lot of issues. But the most widely used criteria to diagnose PCOS is what's called the Rotterdam criteria. So typically it's kind of 2 out of 3, then you're considered to have PCOS. So one would be those irregular periods or the like absent ovulation. So if you're not ovulating, so this is when you have like either like really long cycles or or really short cycles. So your period is either coming really, really frequently or very infrequently. Obviously, if you're having trouble getting pregnant and it comes down to that you're not ovulating, that would be another, one of the 3 criteria. The second would be the blood work, right? So looking for those high androgens like the testosterone. So, but it's not always diagnosed with blood work, right? Mm-hmm. That's one way that they might look at hormones, but they may also just look for clinical signs like the acne, the facial hair, the hair thinning on the head. They might use that as a criteria. And then the third would be those kind of polycystic appearing ovaries on an ultrasound. But again, it's not necessarily cysts. It's multiple kind of small follicles, and sometimes it's referred to as like a string of pearls, because on an ultrasound it looks like, it looks like a string of pearls, like all those kind of follicles are arranged in like a string almost. So those are some things that they might use to kind of diagnose PCOS.
So to confirm, Sam, you don't necessarily have to have follicles in your ovaries to have PCOS.
That's correct. So they may only look at your, testosterone or your androgen levels in blood work. And then they, if you're not ovulating or if you're having irregular periods, they may just see those two criteria and be like, you might have PCOS. That's the kind of interesting thing about it, is that it's not like cut and dry, right? It's not just, you test for one thing and it's like, oh yeah, you have this. It's more like a collection of symptoms. That's why it's called a syndrome, right? Because it's a collection of symptoms that you might have, and it presents differently in every person, and it's almost like a spectrum. So for some women it might be quite severe, and for others it may not be as severe, or they may not have as many symptoms. So it's a unique one for sure.
Yeah, because I was questioning if I had PCOS for different symptoms completely from Amy, because I had my periods.
They were regular, right?
They've always been regular, but I do struggle with weight gain around the stomach, and I used to have more acne. Now I don't really anymore, but I got checked for like an internal ultrasound, and I was confirmed that I did have follicles in one of my ovaries, but it never went further than that. So for me, like, I don't know, do I have it? Do I not? Or just my symptoms similar to PCOS, but I don't have that because I didn't experience a hard time to conceive either. Yeah. So it's like, do I just appear to have PCOS, but it's not that? I just have some symptoms.
And to be honest, I had to self-advocate for myself and ask my general practitioner to be seen by an OB to get a confirmation of the diagnosis, because it was still like all up in the air back then. And with my first one, I didn't have a hard time to conceive. They were all telling me like, hey, heads up, you might have a hard time conceiving. Please come back, blah, blah, blah. My first one, it was quick, but with my second one, it took me 1.5 years. So yeah, I kind of feel like my symptoms changed throughout the years.
Yeah,
because now I have a lot of hair thinning. I'm not sure if it's a combination of stress and postpartum and all of the above, but yeah.
I feel like some in here in our region, it kind of stops. Like, they don't go further, and for like the options, I don't know if they changed now, but when Amy got diagnosed, she was offered birth control, right? To kind of manage
birth control, and I'm probably going to say this wrong, but metformin. And not really sure what else, but yeah.
It wasn't the same approach as with you, Sam, like nutrition and focusing on moving your body in the right way and stuff like that.
But they did tell me like there's holistic approaches like nutrition, relaxation techniques, all that stuff, but they did give me the medical approach, which was birth control. And back, I didn't know what to do. I was 20 years old, and I just decided to go on the birth control, which did it help my symptoms? Not sure, because I was still having a lot of testosterone. I'm not sure if it helped my mood that much. So I don't know. And I went back on the patch after I had my kids. Didn't really help.
And now you're not.
No, I stopped.
So I bet it's very different for everybody. I'm sure some people the patch, whatever birth control might work really well, but for some it doesn't. And we're just some of them that the birth control didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the benefits of receiving a diagnosis is that it's like, okay, now I know what I'm dealing with, right? That can give you a little bit of peace or a little bit of clarity, which can help mentally, right? To not be guessing like, do I have PCOS? Is it this? Is it that? I don't know. But then when when the only solutions that are presented are medications, that isn't necessarily helpful for everyone, right? And things like hormonal birth control would really kind of mask the symptoms a little bit, which can give people relief, right? So there's no shame in using medication when you have very severe symptoms. But also, it's not addressing the underlying root issues that are contributing to the PCOS, which is the raised insulin, right? The blood sugar dysregulation, the hormonal imbalances that we mentioned before. And the metformin, is also a prescription medication that is meant for type 2 diabetics to help, again, to regulate blood sugar, which we know blood sugar regulation issues is a big kind of signature sign of PCOS, or a very common experience for women who are living with PCOS, is that insulin resistance. So the metformin is really meant to help with that as well. But again, it's just kind of putting a little bit of a band-aid on top of the issue rather than addressing why do you have insulin resistance in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So instead of digging a little bit deeper and understanding that, it's kind of just, it's giving your body a little bit of support to be able to regulate blood sugar a bit more with the help of the medication. So I do think that, there's a lot that can be done to help manage the symptoms of PCOS more naturally, aside from, or even alongside using medication, right? There's a lot that can be done.
Yeah. And I think this, how you answered that question, Sam, is going to help a lot of people, because I think it's very important to kind of look at the other side and how important it is to kind of work on the underlying issues with the help of medication if needed, but for sure that the underlying are very, very important.
Yeah. And to be honest, I'm going to be 30 and I've tried a lot of different approaches, and if I'm very honest, the one approach that really worked for me was when I was healthy. Before I had kids, I think in 2017, 2018, when I got the diagnosis. But I lost a lot of weight back then, and I was taking care of, my physical health, going to the gym, working out, eating well. And that's when my symptoms were better managed, I guess. Then I had kids, and, it's harder. Maybe that's an excuse. Maybe it's not harder, but I had a hard time. Let's just be real.
There's more moving pieces when you're taking little ones, for sure.
Yeah. So, now I want to get back on track because I'm still struggling a lot with my symptoms. I've accepted it. There's nothing I can do to cure it, but I've been trying to manage it, but the symptoms are still there,
Yeah,
so
for sure.
What can I do, Sam?
That's when
help a girl out.
You get Sam to be your coach, and then she'll help you.
Yeah. So tell me, how does PCOS always also affect the brain and the well-being?
Yeah. Well, there's definitely that kind of brain hormone metabolism loop that's, everything's connected in the body, right? So it almost always comes back to the blood sugar regulation. I'm probably going to talk a lot about that in this call because of how important that is for PCOS. So when blood sugar is unstable, or insulin levels are remaining kind of chronically high, the brain is going to perceive that as stress. Okay. And that's really going to impact, it's going to impact things like serotonin and dopamine, but it's also going to impact the stress response. So cortisol, right, which we dove into in our last episode. But the body is incredibly intelligent. It's really, really smart. And it's also kind of still stuck in a prehistoric mode a little bit. So anytime, if there's a major stressor, cortisol rises, there's going to be a glucose spike, right? So that the body has energy to run away from the stressor. The opposite is true as well. So when stress is high, cortisol is released to help us, deal with whatever the stressor is. So all that to say, it can be a little bit of a vicious cycle of stress being high, cortisol being released, glucose coming up, or glucose comes up and then stress is increased. So there's definitely a major connection there of, how well we're able to manage our stress and our blood sugar. I think the other kind of like mental, emotional piece is also our sleep quality. So if we're dealing with high cortisol, blood sugar spikes, that's going to impact our sleep quality, which is then going to impact how emotionally resilient we are, right? So if I think anyone listening to this, you probably know that those nights where you don't sleep very well, you're quicker to snap at your kids or your partner, you're probably pretty irritable, you don't have a very much patience. That's going to impact how you feel on a day-to-day basis mentally as well, right? So I think what's important to say, and Amy, I think you said something along the lines of like that you were you overreacted or something, like when you were younger before you got diagnosed, that was one of you like had a lot of mood swings and like that was one of the symptoms. I think it's important to understand that like women with PCOS are not just like too sensitive, they're not overreacting. It's because their nervous system is under like real psychological strain. Like there's stress that's going on there, both from a perceived stress perspective, but also from the stress that's going on internally with like the blood sugar spikes and the like high insulin. All of that is causing the body to be like in a very stressed state.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest with you, Sam. Like I've always struggled with that, especially the week before my periods, and I talked about that the first time I think we met or whatever. But I get like, I don't know, it's like I'm a different person.
Me too, though.
Like my personality, I get so moody. I hate everyone. I don't like people. And I don't know. It's like, and then my periods are over and I'm like, why the heck did I
not
overreact?
even? And for me, it's literally before it starts, and then when it starts, I feel like myself again. So, but I know when my period is coming. I know because sometimes I'm gonna get really mad. Like not.
I used to fight with my spouse all the time. Like I would like start fights for nothing. And I was like, 3 days later, I was like, what the heck did I do?
Because it feels very, it's like, it happened to me postpartum too recently, and then last week for me, for my period. But I got like really mad, and sometimes I just look at my husband, I'm like, I don't even understand why I'm mad, but I'm so mad right now that I need to leave this. I need to go somewhere alone because like the emotions, I don't know, it's kind of scary sometimes.
Sam, it got so bad for me in high school, and I'll be very honest with everyone here. It got to the point where I'm not even sure if I should say it, but it got to the point where I attempted suicide at one point. Like I was just all over the place. Like my hormones were all over the place. I was sad. I was angry. I guess I was depressed. I guess I had anxiety. I don't know. But yeah, in high school and university, it wasn't too cute.
and I think also PCOS, it not only the underlying and everything that it does to your brain, but for your emotional well-being, because you don't quite understand what's happening. Like that affects you big time, because then you're like, I'm so depressed, like I don't even know why. And it's weird because you feel like that for a short period of time. So that's really confusing, because like you're emotional for a few days and then you're like, why was I like that? And I don't understand. So then you're like mad, or you can get anxious because you might have said something you shouldn't have said to somebody, or you got really angry at your kids, or I don't know, maybe you screamed at your dog outside and somebody saw you. Like there's a lot of things that could happen, right? So yeah.
It's not a fun diagnosis, let me tell you.
No, and I mean, thank you for that honesty and vulnerability, because it's not easy to talk about mental health struggles, and especially when we're young, well, at any age really, like when you're experiencing those mood swings, that's real. Like that, those feelings and emotions are real, whether they are, powered by insulin resistance or if they're powered by hormone imbalances. It feels very, very real in that moment. And, it's hard to kind of step outside of yourself and be like, I'm just having a hormonal or like there's an imbalance that's causing me to feel this way. You still feel all of that like overwhelm and that anger and that frustration, and like all of those things are very much happening. And so it's not just like it's just, you're just PMSing or whatever. There are some very real imbalances going on. And, the big one, like I said, is that insulin resistance, which can, it happens all month long. So that's kind of compounding, right? It's driving inflammation. It's causing those like blood sugar crashes that can lead to like mood swings and anxiety. But then it's also important to think about our sex hormones, right? We've talked about them in a past episode, but I like to think of them as kind of like a symphony, right? So there's all of these different sex hormones that are rising and falling in like these rhythms throughout the month, and they all kind of work together with the other ones. So if one is off, like a symphony, if one instrument is off, it sounds terrible, right? So same thing with our hormones. If one is imbalanced, it's going to cause a cascade of imbalances in other areas, right? So when we're thinking about PCOS, testosterone, that's going to interfere with how we're feeling. Low progesterone, that's a big one. If you're someone who PMSs and you feel like you're not yourself the days before your period, it's very likely that it's related to low progesterone. Estrogen imbalance, right? That can really impact our serotonin levels. It can impact how we're feeling on a day-to-day basis. So these things aren't just in your head. They're actually like downstream effects of like what's going on hormonally and metabolically in your body.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. So for anyone who's listening, you know, you're not crazy. And this isn't, it's a very common experience, but it's not necessarily normal, right? It's not something that you have to live with. There are ways that you can manage PCOS or just manage hormonal imbalances in general so that you're not like on a roller coaster of emotions all the time.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, like if I think about everyone in my circle, like not everyone has PCOS or endometriosis or any hormonal issues, but a lot of them do. And like, I wish I would have known what I know now when I was a kid. Because sometimes I didn't even understand myself. You know, it was, I don't know, I know something was wrong, like the intuition, I knew something was wrong. But there's a lot of things that I did that I wish I didn't, knowing what I know now. But now that I know, and I'm hoping to let others know, if you feel there's something off, please self-advocate for yourself. And there's probably something off, you know. The woman intuition is...
And that's just not only for PCOS, just in general.
Yeah, any kind of mental health or physical health diagnoses, like if you feel like there's something off, there's probably something off, and there's help out there for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And sometimes we just need education.
Yeah.
And guidance.
But when you're a kid, you know, you're also shy to talk about it, you know, like I didn't want to say like, hey, I have hair on my arms, is that normal? You know?
Well, an excess amount.
We feel
right.
awkward and uncomfortable in our bodies at that age, and sometimes young people are dismissed as like, oh, it's normal for your hormones to be raging, right? For you to feel moody and, you know,
you're just a teenager.
Right. But unfortunately, the same sort of thing happens to women all the time, no matter their age, right? So it can be like, oh, you know, we ran labs, the labs are fine. Yeah. Or, oh, you have PCOS, that's normal for PCOS. Yeah. Or, you know, like unfortunately, there is like a lot of kind of brushing off that can happen. And so I love how you said, Ashley, like advocating for yourself is really, really important. And just, you know, sometimes pushing a little bit more to be like, hey, I do not feel right in my body.
Yeah. And that actually brings us to one of the questions. So like a lot of women feel dismissed or misunderstood by healthcare practitioners. And I had to do it myself, right? I had to self-advocate. Like it doesn't mean that they're not doing their job right. It's just, it's not their expertise, right? So I knew that my healthcare provider was not specialized in hormonal stuff or whatever issues for women. So I said, you know what, there's something off. I need you to send me to someone who knows what's wrong with me. And that's where I got my questions answered, I guess, you know. I got a diagnosis. So I was happy that I was able to do that, because had I not self-advocated, maybe I would still be questioning today. Right?
Yeah, and I actually, it brings me to a question to kind of side. So for those people, the people that are listening that don't have a healthcare provider, because I'm sure a lot of people don't, like our other sister doesn't, because she moved out of town, so she lost her family doctor, so now she doesn't have a provider. So for those people, like what, and if they feel like they have some symptoms for PCOS that you mentioned earlier, can you kind of guide them what they can do to kind of help manage their symptoms right now without a medical practitioner or any medication? What they can do for the base, I guess?
Yeah, and like to tap in the other question that I asked, like what do we do when we feel dismissed or misunderstood, right?
Yeah, great questions. I mean, I think that it can be tough to advocate for yourself because of that like power dynamic, you know, when you're visiting your doctor or your primary healthcare provider, and they're telling you you're fine or your labs are fine. It can be hard to like say, well, okay, but I don't feel fine, right? So that can be difficult. You know, it is tough because our healthcare system is so overburdened. I mean, I think that, I know VTAC, there are some, you know, like phone services that are available. Maybe we can link to those in the show notes or something. Yeah. I can't think of them all off the top of my head, but there are, you know, you can phone in or you can do like a virtual visit and request a referral. Yeah. I think that can be a helpful way if you don't have a primary care provider. In terms of what you can do, I mean, nutrition is the biggest lever when it comes to managing PCOS because of that blood sugar dysregulation and that insulin resistance, right? So I'm going to sound like a broken record if people have listened to all of our podcasts together, because it comes down to balancing meals. Okay, so keeping blood sugar balanced really comes down to not having carbohydrates alone, right? So, you know, not eating like just a pastry or just pasta or just, you know, bread or rice or something on its own, like sometimes called naked carbs, right? We want to make sure that we dress it up with some protein and some fiber. So that's really going to kind of slow the release of glucose into the bloodstream, and it's going to help the body to be better able to manage that blood sugar. Because what we know, and maybe we should have kind of defined this at the beginning, but when there's insulin resistance, I think it's important to understand what that means. So to kind of back it up a little bit, when we eat food, particularly food that has carbohydrates in it, that food is broken down into glucose in the bloodstream. That is blood sugar, okay? The purpose of that blood sugar is to provide us with energy. So every cell in our body is meant to uptake that glucose, that sugar, into the cell. How it does that is the pancreas releases insulin, and the insulin, it kind of acts like a key. So that key comes over to the cell, it, you know, opens up the cell and shuttles the glucose into the cell, whether that's for immediate energy production or for energy storage for later use. Okay, what can happen, especially with PCOS, is that blood sugar remains high a lot of the time. Insulin then remains high a lot of the time, and the insulin kind of stops working as well. So that key that's supposed to open up the cell, it's trying and trying and trying, and the cell is not opening up to let the glucose in. So the pancreas is producing more and more of that insulin to try to get the cells to open up and take in that glucose, because we can't have glucose lingering in the bloodstream for too long. That's going to cause some serious health issues. So that's kind of important to understand. What can lead to insulin resistance is when we are eating a lot of carbohydrates in general, or carbohydrates on their own, that glucose is going to spike. And if the insulin is not kind of working as well, or our cells are becoming resistant to that insulin, hence the insulin resistance, insulin is then going to remain high. So glucose is high, insulin is high. This can lead to, you know, a lot of the mood swings, the like energy drops, the weight gain, especially around the midsection, a lot of those, and then it can kind of like downstream lead to hormonal issues, right? So I think it's important to understand that insulin resistance piece and how important it is to pair your carbohydrates with protein and fiber so that we don't experience such a huge spike in glucose when we consume our meals. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just to tell our listeners, I guess, where to go would be, correct me if I'm wrong, dietitian. I'm not sure I'm going to say this in English, but naturopath.
It's the same word, but I don't know how
Yeah.
to say it in English.
Naturopath, okay. And a nutritional coach, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So, absolutely. I think all of those options, I would say with a naturopath, finding someone who is, does a lot of work with insulin resistance, I think would be a good approach, because nutrition isn't their only specialty. Whereas a dietitian or a nutritionist like myself, nutrition is our bread and butter, right?
Yeah.
So, finding someone who definitely has an expertise in nutrition is key.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so going to, someone like a dietitian, a nutritionist, a naturopath, someone who can really help to guide you in your nutrition and how to make sure that your meals are balanced, that you are, keeping your blood sugar levels in an optimal range. That would be, obviously ideal, but we know that not everyone can utilize those services. It's not accessible for everyone. So let's kind of continue to talk about some other strategies. I mean, nutrition, like I said, is a big one. Keeping those meals balanced, not eating carbohydrates on their own. There's a lot that we can do to balance blood sugar. Obviously, food is the big one because that's where the blood sugar is coming from. But we can also really use some lifestyle habits. So another one would be moving your body after you eat. So, for a lot of folks, especially if you're like, you're busy, maybe you're raising kids or you're at the office or whatever, maybe you can't, or maybe you eat at your desk or whatever. Getting up and moving your body, even for 5 minutes after you consume food, can be really, really beneficial because it's going to actually utilize some of that blood sugar right away for energy immediately. So that's going to help to bring it down a little bit. Another big one is doing strength training. So building muscle, putting some lean muscle mass on your frame, that's going to be super, super beneficial because those muscles that you're building, number one, you're creating more muscle cells. And number two, those muscle cells that you already have are getting bigger as you strength train, as you get stronger. And what that means is that those cells are going to uptake the glucose a lot more easily and a lot more efficiently. So having more muscle cells is a very good thing. Another one is, and this, we can talk more about what this actually looks like in practice, but managing stress, because we talked about that connection between cortisol and, blood sugar. It's really important to keep stress manageable in whatever ways that you can, right? And especially, at bedtime, if you can really try to wind down a little bit, if you can try to incorporate a little bit of breath work or meditation or restorative yoga or something where you can, just kind of calm your nervous system, that's really going to help both with sleep and with stress, because we know that with poor sleep comes, more insulin resistance, worse cortisol, impacts our mood, right? So sleep and stress are two big pieces. So yeah, to kind of summarize, nutrition,
sleep,
moving your body, especially after meals, strength training, trying to get sleep as consistent as you can. Obviously we all have different circumstances, but doing the best that you can, and managing stress, even if it's just taking some deep breaths throughout the day, doing as best as you can.
Yeah. So by doing that, you're supporting your hormones and your mental health.
100%. I think that there's a really nice connection there. And we know that the more that we're able to support the insulin resistance and support our hormones, that's all going to it's all connected, right, with the brain. So we're going to be kind of doing our mental health and our physical health a favor.
Okay. So, I'm someone who has PCOS, and I'm curious to know what would be like the, how would I say it, like the power foods, I guess, for PCOS?
Protein.
Yeah.
Protein, obviously, but we're all busy, we're all,
Yeah, but
I know,
excuses.
I know, but I'm just saying for people who are busy and just need what can I just grab if I have PCOS?
Yeah, as food.
What are the power foods?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anytime you can opt for something that has protein as opposed to just carbs on its own. So let's play through some scenarios. Let's say you're going through, the Timmy's drive-through, and they have muffins or they have those egg bites.
Yeah.
Which one would you choose?
Egg bites, for sure.
Right?
You want the muffin, though.
No, but let's say, I want to make...
Pair it with the muffin, right?
Yeah.
Have both of them so that you're having the carbs, which I don't want to demonize carbs by any means.
Yeah.
They're an important fuel source, but we need to make sure that we are kind of moderating that glucose spike of that muffin by incorporating some protein. So pair them together, right? Instead of just having the muffin on its own.
So like banana, peanut butter, or apple and cheese, right?
Yeah.
That's what I learned in my books when I was reading. But like, let's say, you know, January 1st, I want to make some changes. I go to the grocery store. What do I buy? You know, like what are the power foods that I should buy?
Fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
That's the easy answer. Simply because there's going to be a ton of fiber in there, right?
Yeah.
So even with fruit, I mean, for someone who has insulin resistance, ideally fruit on its own is not ideal. However, fruit with the skin, like an apple or a pear or something like that, that's going to have some fiber in there. So that's going to slow it down a bit, as opposed to something like a banana that might, you know, cause a bit more of a spike. It's definitely going to be more optimal than, say, a fruit juice, right? Because juice is just going to like spike our blood sugar like crazy. It doesn't have the fiber in it anymore, right? So, fruits and vegetables. If we can incorporate more fiber in your meals, beautiful. That's a great start. Definitely. So, you know, I'm a big fan of something like a Greek yogurt because it's simple. It's high protein. You know, it tastes good. You can put a ton of stuff in there, like put some berries in there for some extra fiber and some extra nutrients, right? Put some nuts and seeds. That would be great for some fiber, some healthy fats, right? That's one of my go-tos. I love having like, you know, some turkey pepperettes or some like, you know, some jerky or even some deli meat. Like I know some people kind of might scoff at that because they're, you know, it is highly processed, but for someone who's busy and on the go and might be on a budget, I think those are great options for a protein-rich snack that you can also pair with other things.
Yeah.
Eggs.
Eggs, yeah. Those are my go-to.
Yeah, eggs are a very powerful food for sure, and so versatile, right? If you're busy on the go, you know, boil, I don't know, 10 eggs on a Sunday and eat, you know, have them as a snack or part of your meal for 5 days. They can keep them in the fridge, right? So simple.
I just want to give people who are listening who have PCOS and are interested in doing some positive changes and can't really, you know, afford expensive services. So when I was first diagnosed, I bought a book on Amazon for $28, I think. And it was, I don't remember the title of it, but it was newly diagnosed with PCOS or something like that. And there's like plenty of recipes, exercises, and like journaling stuff to like manage your stress. So that was kind of like a affordable, I guess, option for me at the time. Buy a book, read it. They're going to give you a lot of examples on how to manage your PCOS.
And it kind of goes just back to what Sam already said, though, like nutrition, weightlifting.
Exactly. But like if you can't afford a nutritional coach, let's say, or, you know, you don't have access to...
You can always educate yourself.
Right.
In a less expensive way type of thing.
Right.
Totally. I think I'm very much a believer in knowledge is power, right? So the more you can educate yourself, I mean, not just relying on your primary healthcare provider they're not going to educate you on nutrition. They're not going to educate you on how to move your body, right? Like, unfortunately, majority will not. So, you know, doing that extra little bit of legwork to kind of understand the diagnosis a little bit more and, you know, just start small. Like, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to overhaul your whole life. You don't have to like throw out your whole pantry, right? I'm a big believer in we can fit all foods in. It's really just how you pair it with something else, right? To kind of reduce the load on your body when you're having it. But yeah, I think books, awesome. I have some resources too. If anyone's listening and, you know, wants to reach out on Instagram or Facebook or wherever, I have some great resources about like how to build a balanced meal, right? How to make sure you're incorporating all three of the macronutrients, protein, carbs, fats. That can be really helpful too, and be happy to share that for free.
That's great.
And as somebody who recently learned how to eat balanced meals at 3 times a day, and
Yes,
balanced
yes.
snacks. It's once you just take the time to read and educate yourself, or have a coach like Sam to just teach you a bit about it, it's gonna come automatically. So as every day when I eat something, I'm like, okay, what else can I add, or is this balanced, or should I eat this instead with that? And I'm always, not always, but more often than not, I take a pause and I make sure I have what Sam said: a healthy fat, carb, and protein. And obviously protein is the one I concentrate the most on, just to make sure that I eat enough, because as Sam explained as well, blood sugars, and I was somebody that experienced that a lot. If I didn't eat enough protein, I would have a crash. I would feel like I could faint. Then I'm really freaking hungry. I can eat my fridge, and what I'm going to go for is carbs. I'm not going to go eat protein or heat up some what is it called?
Turkey bacon?
Turkey bacon. Wow, I had a blank
yeah.
there. But now I do. I make sure that could be a good snack if I didn't already have some, instead of going in my pantry and opening a bag of crackers or popcorn or chips and eating that.
Okay, I have two things. I have to make a joke, one, and then I'll say the second thing. So last Sunday, we made soup. Okay, you should have seen these two make soup. Okay, there was a scale, there was measuring cups.
So many dishes.
I was like, seriously, we're making soup, man. And they're like, nope, Sam said. I'm like, okay, good. But it was funny. Anyways, that's a joke. Second thing. I'm
gonna add to Amy's joke, just to tell everybody how when I did eat my soup, I did feel very full. There was lots of fiber, good carbs, good fats, and protein. So Amy did laugh, but I only had a soup, that broccoli cheddar chicken soup, and I was full for the rest of the night, and I felt very good, didn't have a crash, felt good when I went to bed. So yes, it's extreme. There's lots of dishes, but
it took us 2 hours to make a soup.
But it's worth it.
Yeah. Anyways, okay, before I lose my train of thought, what does a spike in insulin look like? So is that when I feel tired and crashy? Is that what a spike of insulin look like?
So you won't necessarily feel the spike in insulin. You will feel the spike in glucose, that blood sugar, right? So the insulin is produced kind of in response to that spike.
Okay.
So a spike might feel like, initially, it might feel like a jolt of energy, right? Because that's what's happening. You're getting a ton of glucose, which ultimately is energy, into your bloodstream. So you might feel all of a sudden like energized. It's the crash that you're really going to feel, right? And that can feel like lightheadedness, shakiness, brain fog, difficulty concentrating, hanger, right? Like very irritable.
Okay.
It can cause fainting. It can cause like a lot of, if you have a pretty severe crash, which is basically like you're going hypoglycemic, right? Your like blood sugar is coming way too low. It can feel really terrible, and it can take a while after that, once you do eat, to start to feel better, right? So that's what we want to avoid, right? Are those like major highs and major lows, because that's where we start to feel symptoms on either end. It's not great. And it's funny that you said, you could eat the whole fridge and you were craving, like, I want carbs, I don't want like meat, right? That's another very common symptom of the insulin resistance. When the blood sugar is very, very high, we don't crave the healthy stuff. We're craving like the sweets and the sugars and all that sort of stuff, right? And that can feel incredibly intense when we're having those cravings, for sure.
So I just want to note again that basically it goes in our pyramid of needs that we learn in mental health. The base one is food,
meet your needs. Yeah.
And it's food, water. So at the end of the day, that's where we're getting back to. You need to focus on your nutrition, and that's the most important thing. And I think for anyone, not just somebody who has PCOS, but for every human being, we should concentrate more on our nutrition to take care of ourselves. And
the basic needs.
Yeah. So basically, just
sleep.
Be more mindful of what you eat. And then I think it goes back to a lot of mindfulness. And like, if you would have that muffin, how do you feel 30 minutes after compared to those egg bites? And it takes some time and practice for you to realize that there is a difference.
Yes. And I think that one thing that we're doing wrong because we live in such a crazy world, busy, whatever, is that we forget to check in with ourselves. So sometimes we're like, why am I feeling so shitty? Well, did you take a minute to check in? Are you eating junk food? Are you drinking Red Bulls every day? Are you watching TV all the time? You know what I mean? Like,
and
check
I'm that
in with
friend
yourself.
now. I'm really that friend, Sam. Now I'm like, did you eat?
She gives me a hard time because I don't eat fruits.
I'm like, I tell Amy, she's like, oh my God, I'm feeling, like yesterday she was doing all sorts of housework and then she's like, I don't feel really good. I'm like, did you eat? Yeah, I had a muffin. I'm like, wow. Okay, your body's very much fueled. So like, I'm like the devil's advocate there. I'm like, go eat right now. And then I have to do that with a lot of my friends. I'm like, well, did you eat? Did you drink water? What did you eat?
Exactly. That's the basic needs though, right? Did you eat? Did you drink water? Did you sleep well last night? You know, so that's one thing that I want to recap from all of this is check in with yourself. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this way?
And if you're like me, you're a mom that doesn't really sleep a lot now because you have a 5-month-old, but I can still focus on my nutrition, my water, moving my body, doing mindfulness activities, reading at night. But no, I can't necessarily control the sleep. Yeah. But I can do everything else. So there's things that we can control. And when you can and you want to, the excuses, well, you can let them go.
And they don't cost anything. You know, those little changes, they don't cost anything. And there's a lot of people that do not drink water at all.
Oh, so many people.
Just coffee, energy drinks, you know, and just... We're talking about our stepdad here. We love him, but the guy doesn't drink water, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
To see how anyone could survive, really. But, I mean, I think what's important to remember, too, is, like, it's not necessarily about eating less, right? I think that so often, especially women, we're like, oh, if I skipped a meal, like, gold star, right? Like, that's the opposite of what a woman with PCOS should be doing. We should not be skipping meals. I know sometimes life happens and it's like, oh shoot, I was really busy and I didn't have access to food. But if we can be having, again, those, 3 balanced meals a day, it's going to make such a huge difference because how does our body perceive that when we miss a meal? It's stressful, right? And we already know a body with PCOS is already in a heightened state of stress, right? So we don't need to stress the body out even more by skipping meals and not eating regularly, right? That's going to create even more havoc with our blood sugar. But also, like, I do want to I want to come back to that example of the muffin and the egg bites because I think it's an important one. It's not always about choosing the quote unquote healthy option. I really don't think it is because that's not going to be sustainable in a real life, right? Sometimes you're going to want a muffin and that's totally fine. A muffin can be a healthy option. Let's just always try to think, what can I have with it, right? Because I'm not telling anyone listening, you should eat less. That's the answer. Absolutely not. It's eating regularly, eating enough, and eating the right combinations of things, right? So, like getting a little bit of adding some more fuel to that snack that's going to help kind of keep your energy stable for a lot longer. That's the play, right? Like that's what anyone with PCOS, that's the biggest change that you can make that's going to have the biggest impact on how you're feeling is just, trying to avoid having those things on their own. You don't have to cut them out completely, but let's just make sure that they're paired with something else.
There you go. So I can eat muffins every day with a chicken breast.
Weird combo, but I guess.
I'm just kidding.
So it just goes back to everybody should just be mindful. Is my meal balanced?
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Yes, I can
like
have...
you said, now you notice such a huge difference, right? So it's like once you go there, you can't go back because you can't like unsee what you've seen or unexperience what you've experienced, right? Once you realize how different you feel, like you can go a lot longer without eating when you have that balanced meal or snack as opposed to like feeling hungry again 30 minutes later. It's like, okay, now I'm starting to see like how this is impacting my hunger too.
Yeah. You're not encouraging people to cut out foods that they like. You're just encouraging them to eat it in a balanced way. So for example, I do enjoy carbs. Like I like rice, I like pasta, I love muffins, but like for me now, when I eat a a stir fry, I like to have a bit of rice. Sometimes I can eat a bit of cauliflower rice, but sometimes I want the real thing. But I'll just eat a very smaller portion of rice and I'll have a lot more of the stir fry, but I still have that rice. So in my mind, it's not like I can't allow myself to have it. I do, but the respectable portion size.
Yeah, it's a bit of a compromise, right? Like it's still enjoying your food and not feeling like deprived or like restricted from anything, but it's just being a little bit more mindful again about your food choices so that they're supporting your body as opposed to like pushing it more into dysfunction.
Yeah. If there's anyone listening right now that has PCOS and they're overwhelmed by their diagnosis, I want to hear what you have to say, Sam, but I just want to tell them, first of all, you're not crazy. There's support out there. Advocate for yourself. There's always help. And, it's going to get better. That's what I want to tell them. Because I wish I had that advice when I was a kid. I thought I was crazy. I thought there was something wrong. But like I said, knowing what I know now, I could have done things a lot differently. But anyways, here I am. I've accepted it. I know what I have wrong. Well, not wrong, but I know what I have and now I can manage it. So even if it's not PCOS, anything that you have, like mental health issues or physical issues, there's always options to manage.
Yeah.
You just have to find the right resources. Am I right?
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that nothing has gone wrong, right? Anytime you're having a symptom of some sort, it's your body trying to communicate with you.
Exactly.
So, try to get curious about like, why am I having these mood swings? Or why am I feeling really lethargic? Or why am I having, these crashes in energy, right? Like, getting curious, I think, can be really helpful. And just know that, like, you didn't cause this. If you're, living with mental illness or PCOS or any sort of health diagnosis, it's not because anything you
didn't ask for it. Yeah.
No. And, ultimately, a diagnosis does not define your worth, and it doesn't define how your health will be throughout the rest of your life. And we can absolutely manage, especially something like PCOS is very much manageable, right? And you have a lot of control, which is the great news.
Yeah, and one thing that I also want to mention is that when I was a kid, I thought that people would be grossed out, of what the hair I had on my arms or whatever. So I was always self-conscious. So I was always wearing sweaters when I was a kid. And then when I have accepted it, I'm like, you know what? I didn't ask for this. This is who I am. Who cares? And like people don't even question it or they don't care. And like even when I started, I didn't date a lot in my life, but I mean, when I started dating, it's something that I've mentioned at the very beginning because it's something that I was self-conscious, right? And none of them cared. So again, if you have PCOS and you're overwhelmed by it and you're stressed about what people are going to think, people don't really care. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't define who you are. It is what it is. And once you have accepted and embrace it, I think life...
But I think the big thing is it is manageable.
Yes.
So don't feel like there's nothing you can do, because that's not true. So don't lose hope, because this podcast is for you. Like, you can manage it.
Yeah. And you know what? Unfortunately and fortunately, you're not the first woman to be diagnosed with PCOS.
Yeah. Do you actually know the stats? Like, do you know?
I don't know the stats. I kind of want to Google it really quickly.
Probably like 1 in 5.
Because I know a lot of people in my not circle of friends, but my acquaintances that I can name on the top of my 2 hands right now that
are actually diagnosed.
Yeah. So I know it's a lot. And if it's not PCOS, then it's endometriosis or it's,
or just
hormonal imbalance. Yeah. A lot of people struggle.
Yeah, and I mean, you're not alone. And also, the reason it's good news that there are other women out there with this is that there is a lot of help out there and there are a lot of ways to manage it, right? You're not you're not kind of a unique case
Yeah.
in that sense, right? Like this has been addressed before and it will continue to be addressed. I just Googled it. It says it affects roughly 6 to 13% of women of reproductive age worldwide, which that sounds very conservative to me, but still, like, it's a decent percentage.
Yeah.
And I just want to highlight again what you said, Sam, because I really like that, to be curious about the symptoms or how you're feeling. Because again, I might be repeating myself, but that's one thing that I did for myself, and not specifically for PCOS, but I knew that there was something in my body that wasn't working well, and I really wanted to know why, because it's not because I had a lack of effort or a lack of trying, but I started to get curious and I started to question and try to educate myself about specific things. And now that I kind of know and what my body kind of needs, now I know how to manage it. But that's because I stayed curious and I kept advocating for myself.
Yeah.
Because even if I don't have PCOS, a lot of the times I felt like I was a unique case. That I was the only person dealing with all of this, and I had so many questions, to which I still do, but now I'm able to kind of manage that. And yes, I could have 1,000 excuses, and I absolutely did for a lot of years in my life, but where I am today, now I really prioritize my health, so I will pay to take care of my health. Because we'll take care of we'll pay to get our hair done, but at the end of the day, for me, it's like, okay, well, I'll pay for my health. So, because that's the most important thing to me right now. And it is manageable, and you can change your habits. And yes, even if you have 10 kids, 2 jobs, whatever, there's small things you can do to help yourself, because at the end of the day, you'll feel better if you do.
Yeah. And no one ultimately is going to care as much about your health as you are. You know, no one's going to advocate for you. No one's going to come in and be like, I think you're dealing with this. We should probably do this, right? Until you reach out and get some support. And that's, you know, obviously I'm biased. Like, I would love for every woman in the world to have coaching, because having that customized, like, one-on-one support is huge. But, you know, like, we've talked about a lot of strategies here today that you can, you know, incorporate very low cost or no cost at all. And so it's like, you know, just, again, get curious, try to learn as much as you possibly can. There's a lot of resources out there. I think that's would be my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah. Listen to your intuition, your signs, your symptoms, and your emotions.
Yeah.
Emotions are also there for a reason, right?
Absolutely.
So, Sam, we love you. We are a power team, and
really
I
are.
appreciate you. Well, we appreciate you.
We really
I
do.
appreciate you. Thank you for having me on again, and we have to chat about our next topic.
Yes, we will. Behind the scenes.
Yes,
Stay
for
tuned.
sure. Thanks, ladies.
Thanks for spending this time with us. It truly means a lot. We hope today's conversation gave you something to think about, something to feel, or maybe just reminded you that you're not alone in this.
Remember, mental wellness isn't about having it all together. It's about showing up, staying curious, and being kind to yourself along the way. We'll be back soon with more real talk, more laughs, and more honest moments.
If you found value in today's episode, we'd love it if you'd subscribe, share it with someone you trust, or leave a review. Until then, take care of your mind and be gentle with your heart.